What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Electrician Live. My name is Paul Abernathy. I'm your host as always. Welcome to the live stream here on Wednesday nights where we learn the National Electrical Code. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to join me here at the Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. And as always, want to do some shout outs into the room. We'll give you, as I do always, a quick update of what the status is here at the Academy. And then I will get into tonight's lesson. So tonight's lesson, we're going to be looking at non-dwelling applications. So we've looked previous episodes. If you go back in the archives, you'll see that we've talked about single-family dwellings, multi-family dwellings. We've done optional methods, standard method. But today we're going to be looking at some applications and pick apart different pieces that I feel that you should know. And yes, I know my hat blends into the background. But we're going to look at some of the different little pieces of some calculations that you might encounter on an electrical exam. But not only that, you need to know these things out in the field as well. Okay, so we're going to be covering that tonight anyway. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift over to the chat so I can say hey to everybody. And then I will give you some updates on what's going on here at the Academy like I always do. So let's go on and get shifted here to the chats. All right. I want to do some shout outs from everybody. Let's see here. I want to say Mr. Batista, howdy fellow Sparkies. Thanks for joining me. Mr. Batista, the Basement King. Whack Hack himself is in the house. Thanks for stopping by, Jay. Make sure you check him out over on TikTok, folks. Definitely want to make sure you check him out. Let's see who else we got. David Englehart, CMECP. Also should mention the Basement King is also a CMECP as well. So we got two CMECPs in the house. OT, thanks for joining. James is in the house. Kyle's in the house. So thanks for joining, guys. Welcome to the stream. Whoever you're out there, if you're out there and you want to join us and you want to give a shout out, just give a shout out and I will give you a mention here on the stream. All right. Lucio, is that how you say it? Lucio. Hi, welcome to the stream as well. All right. So a couple updates, folks, for those out there, what's going on before we get into the nice little lesson here. So you've probably seen it. We've added 2 new URLs
kind of the update is we have the Sparky Mafia. Hey, what's up, Alberto? Thanks for joining me. So Alec, thanks for joining me, Alec. So the Sparky Mafia is going to be a unique collection of items, and I really don't want to say a whole lot about that yet, but that's going to be an amazing collection of really unique products and be different things, and it's going to be in a neat style. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like Mafia has different levels in the Mafia, where we're going to have the same type of thing, kind of funny logos and graphics etched into things like decanter sets and flasks and neat things with really unique electrician driven type of designs. We're really excited about that, making a serious investment in that. But in that scenario, we're going to have all different types of stuff available. So that's going to be cool. So again, pretty neat stuff that we're going to be offering. It's also going to be SparkySwag.com. So SparkySwag.com is going to be where you're going to get and see all that Sparky Mafia. And it's just it's playing on a bunch of logos and designs that people really liked over the years, the skulls and the different things. And we're gonna make it fun, and they're gonna be very unique. Okay, so it's going to be pretty unique offering. So that's what we got going on. We also have a calculations book that's supposed to come out at the end of this month, and I am grossly behind on that. But it's supposed to be done by the end of this month. Let's hope I stay on track. Y'all know that I'm famous for getting off track, but hopefully that's going to be there. Hey, what's up, Francis or Rewire? Welcome for joining us. Tech God, best way to learn the business and law part. Well, on our website, we do have some courses. Oscar, thank you for the like. Again, folks, we love it when you like it, if you like it. Alex Freeland, thanks for joining. Alex and Freeland, welcome to the stream. The business and law, select few states. If you go to our website, fasttracksystem.com, and go under courses, you will see a short list of business and law type of courses that we partner with. I don't offer them because I don't do construction contractors licensing. I only do electrician, master, and journeyman or equivalent. I don't get into contractor stuff. So check that out, but we do have some of those business law on our website. Just whether it's your state or not, you'll just have to check. Let's see here. Who else is in there? Astronaut 324, welcome. Uncle Lulu, thanks for joining me tonight. You take your test this Friday. Any tips on the study the night before? I never study the night before. The night before is a night of rest. So if you're not ready by then, don't try to cram it in your head the night before. You're just going to doubt yourself, and you're going to go into the exam. If you do anything on the night before, do a quick 20, 25 question exam prep thing or whatnot, or jump over on Jay's thing over on TikTok and work the questions with Jay, really relaxed. But yeah, don't get too deep right in the middle of it right here before you take a test. On that Friday, you should not be doing that. Russ, thanks for joining. David, not a fan of skulls. That's all good. Again, it's all on we have other stuff that'll be coming out, but that is the latest thing, is the Sparky Mafia. So it'll be all those kind of things associated around that. Russ passed his exam, I remember. Congratulations, Russ. I think you had to just get past that calculation portion, and it looks like you made it. Russ is a fast track student, so he was able to get through that. We have tons of stuff, Astronaut, for master license. So Fast Tracks Black or Fast Tracks Plus, just go to our website. So fasttracksystem.com, you find everything you want to know about our exam prep courses. Let's see here. Definitely get a good night's sleep. Seraphim, whatever. Thank you for joining me as well. You're most certainly welcome, Basement King. And again, Again, yes, Russ, absolutely right. And I preach this all the time. Stop overthinking it, overanalyzing, as I like to say. Questions are not going to be that hard. As long as you understand the basic core functions, you'll be able to get it. Okay? All right. So that's it. That's no other updates when it comes to the academy. That's pretty much where we are. We're making we made a serious investment in the ability to offer a bunch of new and unique products. We're going to have some limited edition stuff too, like complete decanter sets with the real popular electrical symbols on them. So it's going to be neat for display, but obviously for you that partake in the whiskey and wine and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be very unique. And we're also going to have the ability for you to customize some stuff. So you can have your name put on it, even your company name. So again, look for that. But we are only focused on electrical. We are not getting into the engraving and all that kind of business. We are only focusing on products for electricians and electrical. Okay, so it's going to be pretty unique. And I'm getting back in to the design phase where I'm creating logos and everything, all kinds of unique stuff. That's what's going to be pretty cool. Okay. I am traveling next Monday. I got to go to Chicago. Boo hoo. I don't like Chicago. I just don't like traveling through O'Hara, but I will be traveling next week, teaching a class to some engineers next week in Chicago area, big engineering firm. But no, I am in the studio. I am home. Just got home and back for the last couple days. Okay, so traveling is kind of done I got to try to get caught up with everything. So, all right, that's pretty much the gamut of what we got going on here. Also, my understand it, folks, and y'all will appreciate this. My understanding is the home inspector that thanks, Adam. I didn't see you in the chat, but thanks for joining and liking the stream. The home inspector that challenged me last time and got his feelings hurt, I think he's doing it again. He wants to challenge something on GFCIs. That's what somebody told me. You'd probably think that people would learn their lesson, but okay, I'll slap him down one more time. It's no problem. But anyway, you kind of think people learn, right? But maybe not. Anyway, okay. Let's go on and get into tonight's lesson. So for you that are in the Fast Tracks program, remember, if you have questions that you want to ask on something that that guy. So if you want to ask any questions on any of the units that you've been working on, any of the competency reviews that you have questions on, then, make sure that you put them in the chat. Let me know what unit it is and what edition it is, and we'll go look at any question that you want to go look at, and we'll try to answer that question for you. Okay? So we'll do what we can. All right? But we're going to focus tonight. We're going to focus on non-dwelling applications. So in your Fast Tracks program, this is going to be in Unit 13. And as I've told many people before, the toughest units that we have in our program is Unit 8, Unit 11, and Unit 13. Those are by far the toughest units to focus on, because what they do is they test your ability to understand calculations. Now, watching these videos and things like that help you answer these questions really doesn't help you. So if you're out there and make sure you don't come back and watch this video later when you're going to work your end of unit. And I'm sure you'll forget all that we do, but really try to do it yourself. And I'm going to try to talk you through a lot of the aspects of tonight, because there are little pieces we'll be working on tonight, whether it's receptacles, whether or not we'll be doing multi-outlet assemblies tonight, talking about sign circuit, track lighting, that type of thing. We're going to kind of put a bunch of these pieces together. But it is out of Unit 13, so it should be familiar with many of you that are in the Fast Tracks program. Okay? All right. All right, so let's go on and get in. We'll go on and get into the first part here of the lesson tonight. And again, you have any questions, make sure you pop them in the chat. Hey, Richard, what's up? Let's see. Manuel, I didn't see you pop in here. Thanks for joining. All right. So we're going to kind of get started. Hopefully you can see it on your screen, depending on the device you're working. I can't make it well, let's see if I might be able to make it a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can make it just a little bit bigger. Maybe even just that might even help for some folks. Okay. All right. So there we go. A little bit bigger for you. Okay. So here's the question. So let's kind of put some stuff in perspective here. If you were designing a non-dwelling application, right? So in this scenario, we're going to be doing it looks like this is an office building, right? So this is an office containing the following things. So we're going to work through each one of these things. Now, what I encourage you, now we have a form for this, okay? There is a form that we provide for all of our students, but since I'm doing this on Wednesday night, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are not Fast Track students, I don't want to use the form in order to do these calculations. We'll look at the form that I've already filled out. We'll look at it and see if there's anything we need to change on it, because y'all know how I like to do, right? Y'all know what I like to do on these forms for you. Sometimes I might leave a little something to see if you can find it, but maybe I don't. Maybe I was lazy this week. I'm going to let you be the judge. But what I like to do is work through each one of these questions individually, and then collectively we'll take all of the information and try to solve for this service, okay? All right, so in this scenario right here, just kind of lay down the land for all of you. Make sure you've got some scratch paper. I do. If you do want to follow along on your printout sheet that we have, the blank ones that you can download, feel free to do that. Oh, I should tell you, we are going to be working tonight out of the 2020 edition, not the 2023. Usually by now I'm going to be in the 2023, but I had a request from a student. Would I stick with the 2020 for tonight? So I was like, yes. So I'm going to do it. So we'll stick with the 2020. Not any really too awful significant in the 2023 other than the structure that would change any of this. So we should be okay. Okay. So upon request granted. All right. So let's look at what we've got here in our office building. First things first. Hey, what's up, Swartzy? Welcome. Walter, I see you sneak in there. Thanks for joining, guys. All right, so let's look at the first thing, and let's kind of get together what we have in our office. Okay, so first thing we've got, folks, is we've got an office with 1,900 square feet. So you might want to just jot that down, just for later. So we have 1,900 square feet. So that's the floor area. It's already given to us. Great. Next, we know how many receptacle outlets are being installed. So in this layout, there's 200 receptacle outlets that are going to be in this building. Put it wherever the engineer wants to put them. Okay. All right. Take care, David. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate you stopping by and saying hey. All right. So that's the receptacle outlets. All right. So next, we've got a collection of multi-outlet assemblies. So there's 80 feet of multi-outlet assembly. Okay. And then we've got another multi-outlet assembly, but 25 feet of that multi-outlet assembly is going to be what's called simultaneous use. And that's important for us to know that it was simultaneous use, and you'll see that as we work each one of these out. And next we have a sign circuit, and the sign circuit is 15 amperes at 120 volts. Okay. Next, we have track lighting, and we have 48 feet of track lighting. Okay. So right now we're just kind of getting all the variables that we need. This would be no different if we were looking down and we're starting a calculation and this is just a typical office building application, right? Okay. Let's see. Next, okay, we got a water heater. And a water heater, it's, typical for an office building, right? It's just not a really big water heater. So it's a 5 kW water heater, 208 volt, okay? Next, we have 4 electric heating units. at 10 kW each, and they're 208 volt. We have four. Oh, y'all would be pleased to know that I've got new glasses coming. So for all those that say I'm squinting all the time, let's keep our fingers crossed that these new glasses are better than these glasses. We'll see. If I'm still squinting when the new ones come, it just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? All right. So we've got 4 heating units at 10 kW each. Okay. Then we got 4 air handlers with the blower motors. Those are 4 amps. Okay. So we already have the values given to us. We don't have to go look those up. That's great. Saves us some time. All right. So there you go. 4 amperes, 208 volts, 3-phase. Okay. And then you got 4 air conditioning compressors at 19.6 amps each. So in this one, we've already got the values, right? So that's 19.6 amps each. We have 4 of those. Okay. And then we got 4 condensing fan motors at 3 amperes each. So other than what we did in previous editions, right, is that here we're not giving a horsepower, and then we got to go to where? 430, a 250, since those would be 3-phase. We're not having to go there and look these things up. That's important for this one because, again, if it was horsepower, then you know, just like we've done in the past, then you're going to have to go to 430.250 for 3-phase, go down to 208 volt, and find the FLC, right? And then you would simply take the FLC and you multiply that by the voltage by 1.732 in order to find the VA. Well, in our case, we're going to do some of that anyway, but we did skip a step. We don't need to go to 430 for this. So this is unique to this one because you remember in the other episodes we did, we had to go through that exercise. Okay, so this one saves us that exercise. All right, and just a reminder, at the end when we do the service calc for this, this is a 208 volt, 3-phase, 4-wire service. So a lot of people ask us, do 3-phase. Well, you got to remember that majority of the regular loads that we're working on in this are 120 volt loads. Okay, so it's a 3-phase system, but that's a single phase derived from a 3-phase. But then of course you've got the from the water heater down, we have all those true 3-phase types of loads. Okay, so kind of something to be aware of as we're going to go through this calculation and work each one of these numbers one at a time. Eric, I didn't see you there. Welcome into the room, Eric. Glad you could join us. What did Russ say here? All right, Russ tells us a valuable lesson. Let's see if we can see. Russ says, I did learn a valuable lesson. Turns out I had a knockoff code book my wife bought off Amazon. You notice how they always blame the wife. I had no idea until I heard Paul talking about them, and he was right. Was loaded with mistakes. Not cool. It is not cool. And guys, I tell people all the time, if you think you're going to say, I'd rather go to the Basement King, buy a code book from a Jay. He'll already tab it for you. Other than that, you need to buy them from a reputable source. Do not buy them from Amazon or eBay. You might think you're saving a couple bucks, but boy, that'll suck if you get questions wrong. And happen to be that one question you got wrong that you ended up failing because you had a book from Amazon with errors in it or missing pages or bad stuff. The counterfeits are out there, folks. So again, buyer beware. Always buy your code books from a reputable source. If you can't get it from your local supply house, then get it from NFPA Direct or get it from somebody you can trust like the Basement King. He sells code books as well, and he'll even tab them out for you. So you got to catch him on his stream. He's on TikTok, and he's more than happy to get you hooked up with a code book. But, other than that, just be careful. Sorry that happened to you, Russ. All right, so let's kind of work these questions and start compiling our stuff that we want to write down. And I'm going to tell you what to write down so we can work all this together. All right, so let's do the very first question, right? Let's focus on this. Question number 21 right here, folks. So we got all the info. I'll just leave this right here on the screen. And feel free to ask him any questions that you want as we're working through this. All right, so the first question is, what is the total receptacle, including multi-outlet assembly, volt amperes, service load after demand factors are applied? Okay, so this question is already telling us that we're going to be applying some type of demand factor. It's already making it very clear that that's what we're going to do, okay? All right, so what do we got to do? So the first thing that we're going to do is, let's say, where do we go in the code to get the information that we need? All right, well, the first thing I want to look at is of the receptacles. Here's what we're working with right here. We've got 200 here, okay, for these receptacles. And then we got to worry about these multi-outlet assembly things. Well, let's work this 200 first, okay? So where we're going to go in the code book, folks, okay? Well, first thing we're going to go is we're going to do 220.14, okay, in the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code. So let's go there, okay? Follow along with me, okay? So we're over here, and we're going to go to 220.14 right here, all right? So in this scenario here, we're going to go down to, all right, so the first thing we're going to go here is, let's go to I. So I is just the general receptacle loads, okay? So we said we had 200 of them, right? So here's what we're going to look at. So if you look at the screen, and hopefully you have your code book. So we're at 220.14I first, all right? Okay. And so here it says, except as covered in 220.14J, which is dwellings, so we ignore that, and K, right? And K is not something we're going to ignore, but that's office buildings, and I'm going to show you how we apply that, okay? So I might as well get that out of the way now. So the reason why K is not going to apply to us, because it's two options here, okay, for the office building. So the first one is 1 volt ampere per square foot. So one of the first things we do for the general receptacle applications would be 1 VA per square foot. So since the square footage was 19,000 square feet, then it would be just 19,000 VA. But now we have to see which is larger. So as you can see here, it says the calculated load from 220.14I after all demand factors have been applied, okay? Well, I can tell you that our value is going to be greater than 19,000 VA. And we can already see how that works, but let's go on and do this first, okay? So this is I. Let's do I first, okay? So I, the receptacle outlets, shall be calculated at not less than 180 VA for each single or multiple receptacle on one yoke. Okay, so if it's a simplex, okay, James is in the house. If it's a simplex, just one receptacle on it, it's the yoke. It's 180 VA. Remember, this has nothing to do with dwellings. It's nothing to do with dwellings. We're in non-dwellings. Remember that. That 180 VA plays no role in a dwelling calculation. This is commercial. This is non-dwelling. So 180 VA, okay, per strap. All right, so let's go back to the lesson real quick and get this knocked out first. So we had 200 of those, of these, just regular receptacle outlets, right there, 200. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to do 180 times 200, okay? And that is 36,000, okay? So that's the first thing, that's 36,000 VA. So I'm going to write that down, VA. Okay, now, comparing that to H, if I applied the demand factors of 220.44, and I haven't done it yet, but just to show you that I already know that that 19, we're going to have a bigger value because we still haven't added the multi-outlets and all that stuff in it as well. So let's just go back to the NEC. And just for craps and giggles, we're going to go down and look at 220.44 real quick. Because again, here it says receptacle loads calculated in accordance with 220.14H and I shall be permitted to be made subject to the demands here. Okay. So the first 10,000 is at 100 and the remaining is at 50. So the reason I would do this, 36,000 minus 10,000 equals 26 times 0.50 that's 13 plus the 10 that we took away. That's already 23,000. So that's how we know right away that it wouldn't have mattered when it comes to the I when we compared the 1 VA per square foot, or we have to do the 180 VA. You get me? So that's how I knew right away that we're gonna have to just do the calculation, okay? If that confuses you, please let me know in the chat so I can make sure I explain that to you if you're confused. All right, so all we said here was that when it came to this first equation right here, right, for the office building, which is what we're doing, we do the calculated load from 220.14i after demand factors have been applied, and you compare it to the 1 VA per square foot. Well, that would only be 19,000, right? 1 VA times 19. So we already kind of did one using 220.14i, and we applied demand factors to it, and we were already over 19. So that's why we ignore K2 and we just stay focused on K1. You with me? All right. Just so you kind of get the idea where we're going. So the value we want to write down is 36,000, because remember, we want to apply that 220.44 demand. We want to apply that to not only these receptacles, but we also want to apply it to the multi-wire as well. Why? Because 220.44 said we could, remember? Just so you can see it again, down here, notice what it says? It says the receptacle loads calculated in accordance with 220.14h, which is the multi-outlet assembly, and I shall be permitted to be subject to these demand factors, right? See how we did that? So that's why we want to wait until we get a total. Then we'll apply this one big demand factor to the whole thing for the receptacles. You get me? Okay. All right, so let's go back up. I just kind of wanted to show you those steps first. Okay. All right, so that's why in the office building, that's why we're choosing this one here first, because that's ultimately going to be greater than this one right here. Remember, it says take the larger. So that's why we did that. Okay, well, let's get back to where we were focused. So we've got the 180 VA, so we're done with that. So we wrote that down. That's 36,000. That's 200 times 180. Next, let's go on and knock out these multi-outlet assemblies. So let's see what we've got here. We've got 80 feet, and we got 25 feet. So this one is not simultaneous use, and this one is simultaneous use. So we got 105 total, but we've got 25 is simultaneous and 80 is not. Okay? All right. Sorry about that, guys. I am still struggling with what we call a locked shoulder or frozen shoulder. I cannot lift my shoulder. It's 4 months now I've been suffering from that freaking thing. All right. All right, so let's go back to the code and get our numbers. So we know that we've got 80 feet of regular multi-outlet assembly, and we've got 25 feet of simultaneous use type of multi-outlet assembly. All right, so here's where we're at, folks. We're at H, right here. Hopefully you can see it on your screen, but you should have your computer handy. I mean, your code book handy, right? So absolutely, all my lessons are good for any. I don't teach master and journeyman, Lucio. I don't teach that. I teach the code. So when I teach you, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a journeyman or a master. I don't differentiate. I just teach code, okay? So my goal is to over-educate you, okay? That's my goal, over-educate you. All right, people try to sell you on a journeyman and a master's one and want to take your money. Look, I just sell course. I don't get into that semantics of that garbage. Code is code, right? So, all right, I'd rather overtrain you, right? All right, so if we look at the fixed assembly now, so let's kind of read it here. It says, fixed multi-outlet assemblies used in other than dwelling units or the guest room and guest suites at hotels and motels, okay, so we're not doing dwellings, shall be calculated in accordance with H1 or H2. It says, for the purpose of this section, the calculations are permitted to be based on the portion that contains receptacle outlets. Okay, so that's the only portion of these multi-outlet assemblies that we're even worried about. So in our case, we're told that they're multi-outlet assemblies, 80 feet and 25 feet. Okay, so they contain receptacles. All right, so there's two. So let's see here. There's a one. It says where appliances are unlikely to be used simultaneously. So that would be the 80 feet. Okay, because we didn't say anything about simultaneous use. It says so unlikely to be used simultaneous. Each 5 feet or fraction thereof of each separate or continuous length shall be considered as one outlet of not less than 180 VA. So it's really easy to try to remember these 180 VAs, right? A receptacle, one strap is 180 VA, okay? That type of thing. Every 5 feet of a non-simultaneous use multi-outlet assembly is 180 VA. Okay, so let's go on and get this one calculated and get it out of the way. So what are you looking at? All right, you've got 80, and you're going to divide that by 5 because you want to find how many 5-foot sections it is, right? So it's 80 divided by 5. That is 16. And then you just take 16 times 180. Times 180. Okay? Then that should be 2,880. And I can't see the screens, but Alberto... Very good, Alberto. Congrats. Good job. All right. So we're going to write that down. Okay. I'm just going to write that down. 3,000, what is it? 2,880. And then we're going to move on to the simultaneous use. And so what does that say? All right. So this one says where appliances are likely to be used simultaneously. We said ours was. We had 25 feet that is going to be used simultaneously. It says each foot or fraction thereof shall be considered as an outlet in not less than 180 VA. Okay, makes sense? All right, so let's come back to the lesson for here. So this one is right here. And so we're going to do what? So we're going to do 25, because it's 25 feet, times 180. So 180 each foot. Equals 4,500. Y'all see that? 4,500. So I'm going to write that down. Okay, so our receptacles so far, we have 36,000, which was the 200 receptacles times 180 VA. We had the 80 feet, and every 5 feet of that 80 feet was 180 VA, and there was 16 5-foot sections. So that's how we got the 2880 VA. And then that 25 feet, remember the code says every foot, if it's for simultaneous use, every foot is 180 VA. So we took the 180 and multiplied by 25 times. That's how we got 4,500 VA. Okay. So guess what? That is your total load. Now we got to add this all up. So let's just kind of add it up. So I'll do 36,000. Just kind of checking the chat here. No chat's coming in, so y'all must be with me. All right. Plus 2,880 plus 4,500. That equals 43,338. Y'all can see it right there on my calculator, as you should have it on yours as well. Okay. Now, remember what? We're not done. We haven't answered this question yet. So, and this is why I'm telling you, this is a long question. Chances are you're not going to get an exam question like this because there's a lot of steps involved. Now, you on an exam probably will get asked what it is for 200 receptacles, or they might ask you one for the multi-outlet assembly. I'm trying to walk you through it, pace yourself through it, but typically they're not going to probably ask you a long question like this. But you never know what you're going to encounter, so I want you to be ready and prepared, okay, for anything that comes your way. All right, so we got the total. It says 43,380. Now what are we going to do? Remember what the question says? I want to know what the service load is for these receptacles after the demand factors have been applied. So where are we going to go? Remember, we did it earlier, 220.44. Now we used H and we used I, okay? And K dictated the direction that we needed to go, okay? So we're going to go down here and we're going to go to 20.44, and folks are already up to doing it for us. All right, so what does it say here? Okay, the first 10 of that, so I'm going to take that 43,380. I'm going to take 10,000 away from it. That gives me 33,380, and I'm going to take that times 0.50. That gives me 16,690, and I'm going to add that original 10 back to it. That gives me 26,690, and that's what Alberto has on the screen. Good job, Alberto. So that's our first number. So I'm going to write 21, question 21. The answer is 26,690. Okay, so that's question number 21 for if you're following along. Okay. All right, next one. Doing great. Let's come back to the lesson. And we're going to need that number later, so write it down. Okay, next we're going to look at the general lighting, 22. Okay, what is the general lighting load for this 19,000 square foot office? Okay, so y'all all know by now when you're doing a load calculation and you're not doing dwellings, but you're doing the lighting, general lighting, then what you're going to do is you're going to be going to where? You're going to be going to table 220.12. That's going to give you the VA per square foot for the general lighting. And of course, we're dealing with an office building, right? So we're going to go and see what that is. So we're going to go to the code. Now, a good lesson to remember is everything that we're pretty much doing here today is all going to be kind of right in 220 because we're working in a calculation. So it's all nice and nifty right there. Okay. All right. So Alberto's got us going down there. So let's go to 20.12 right here. And well, here's the table right here. And we're going to go down to office office right here. And it is 1.3 VA per square foot. So jot that down. Just write 1.3 VA per square foot. And it does have a little D on it right here. So we'll go down here and see what D says. Okay, D just gives you other similar locations, like banks and office type occupancies. Right. All right, so we're good. We know it's office type occupancy, so we're in an office. Okay, so 1.3 is all we need. So what do? Let's come back to the lesson. This one's going to be an easy one for us. So all we have to do is do 19,000 times 1.3. And that is 24,700 VA. There you go. Seraphim, y'all are getting it. All right, so 22 is easy for us. We got 24,700. Now, couple things to remember. We're in the 2020 edition. One of the things I want to point out really quickly, because it can screw you if you're in the 2017, okay? Because the lighting, right, has to be a continuous load, right? Has to be a continuous load. So if you're in the 2017, you have to remember that you want to take that value and then multiply it by 1.25 because you have to take that lighting as a continuous load. Okay, and we can do it later. I'll show you how we add it in later, but you just need to remember. And yes, things did change between 2017, 2020 edition. They did a study and the values changed. So be very aware of that, Ted. Ted, didn't see you come in. Thanks for joining us. All right, so let's go back to the code and let's make sure we look at this little note right here. This 125% multiplier for the continuous load, okay, is already included in this unit load. It is not included in the 2017. It is included already for at least the general lighting in the 2020 edition and of course the 2023 edition as well. So just kind of little things to think about, okay? And that's why this is all gray, because they added this, or tan, I should say. That's where they added it in, because if it's a continuous load, and lighting generally is, then you got to remember to take it as a continuous load. And we're going to have to do that as well for other things that we have, like track lightings and other stuff. So again, where you want to apply it is totally up to you, okay? But we're taking the value right here because that's what our table tells us to do. So that's 24,700, and that is already figured as a continuous load. All right, let's go back to the lesson. All right, that was easy. Let's go to 2023 now. Okay, Now, without applying the continuous load demand factor, what track lighting loads, if any, must be contributed to this office calculation? Okay. So if you're thinking about the question, you're going, okay, well, what do we got as far as our track lighting? So how many feet do I have of track lighting? You still see it on the screen, I think. It's just barely on the screen. All right, I have, if I can find my mouse, the mouse is going all over the place here. I've got 48 feet of track lighting, okay? And let's see if anybody's in the chat. Yes, in the chat. There you go. I see some folks giving some values. Okay, Schwartzy's giving some values. So I have 48 feet of track lighting. So where am I going to go to find out the values that I need to use with this track lighting? Remember, it's saying without applying the continuous load. So this is so important about code questions. You know it's lighting. You know it has to be continuous load, but this question is asking you what? It wants the value without the continuous load. That means you got to remember you're going to add it again later, because this question is not trying to trick you. It's just saying, hey, give me the value without the continuous load. That's all the question is asking. So this question is there for a reason, because everybody, we just finished talking about continuous loads and lighting, and now it's specifically telling you, hey, without applying the continuous load. Of course, you got to remember to add it later, but it's not trying to trick you. It's just trying to make you do something, okay? All right? So, all right. So what we're going to do, and I'm working out of the 2020, guys. So as long as you know what edition you're working on in your 2023 or 2017, you know, I'm doing 2020 today, so we'll work out of that. So I'm going to go over to the NEC. And in this case, I'm going to go down to 220.43. Okay, if you just kind of scroll through 220, you'll find it. There's your track lighting. Very specific here. And of course, you could use your index, but remember, in this case, we already know that everything is in 220 because it's a load calculation. So I don't have to go back to the index. You should be able to kind of focus on it in here. So, all right, so here's our track lighting. So here's what it says. It says, for track lighting in other than dwellings, okay, or guest rooms or guest suites or hotels and motels, it says an additional load of 150 volt amperes shall be included for every 2 feet of lighting track or fraction thereof. Okay. All right. So key takeaways is for every 2 feet, it's 150 VA. Okay, so we have how many feet? Let's go back to the lesson. We have, let's see, 48 feet. So we're going to go to 48. We're going to divide that by what? Divide that by 2. Okay, means I have 24. Okay, remember it's every 2 feet. Okay, so I have 24. So once I take that 24, I'll multiply that by 150. And that is 3,600 VA. OT got it? Good. All right. So there you go. So that's the number. And we did not apply any continuous load to that. Remember, the question was just give me the load. Okay. So that's number 23. So write that down. I'll remind you, we're going to have to add continuous load to that later. Right? Alberto, thanks for liking the stream. I love it when folks like the stream. Appreciate it. All right. So 23, it makes me feel like what I do matters, to be honest with you. So hopefully it helps somebody when I do these things. Okay, so 23, we're going to write 3,600. All right, let's go on to 24. Okay, so number 24, right here it says, okay, what volt ampere load shall be included for a sign? For this question, do not apply continuous load demand factors. Right? Again, it's telling you not to do it, which reminds you that you're going to have to do it later. That should always be in your mind, right? Because that sign is going to be on for 3 hours or more. It's continuous load. Anyway, but what we want is the VA for that sign. And again, it's not asking for amps. It wants the VA value for the sign. Okay, let's see if we got anybody in the chat. No? Okay. So first thing we're going to do is it's asking about a specific thing, a sign. So remember 220.14 gives us all these items, and then it gives us directions where to go. So we're going to go back 220.14, and we're going to go back to the beginning here and go down to 220.14 right here, loads, all occupancies, and here we go. We got sign. All right, sign says signs and outline lighting outlets shall be calculated at a minimum of 1200 VA for each required branch circuit. Okay. All right. So in this case, let's go back to the sign because here's the sign. So it says it's just one 15 amp circuit at 120 volts. Okay. So check this out, folks, because here's this important. All right. It says the minimum is 1200. But you still have to calculate the VA. This is where so many people get screwed up here, right? Let me show you. So it says it can't be, it is a minimum of 1200. So you go back to the lesson here. So how do we calculate VA? Well, you volts times the amps, right? Well, we're given the amps and we're given the volts. Very good. So it's 15 times 120. Always use the values they give you. It is 1800. Okay, 1800. We haven't taken anything as a continuous load. We're just trying to answer the question. But look, can't you see where it's possible that somebody would just throw that 1200 in there because you know they're going to give you 1200 is one of the answers, right? You know they're going to do that. So you know they're going to give you the one at what 125% as well as one of the answers. And we have to pay special attention to the question because it said do not take it as a continuous load so far in this question. That's all it's trying to do. So the answer to this one, to 24, is 1800. So 1800. And again, I'll re-emphasize to everybody that it's so important why I grade stuff and will take grades off and not give you points depending on how you do something. I even will mark something wrong if you get the numbers backwards. So say it asks for something like 50 and 100, but you give it 150, maybe it's two-part question. I mark it wrong if you get them backwards. Yes, you might have given me the right numbers, but it's a certain way you read the question. One has to come before the other. I don't do it to be picky. I do it because I am so focused on making sure that when you read these questions, you're really focusing. You're not trying to just speed through these things and get done, okay? Again, this is a structured program. Move through it, take your time. You should not be submitting any end of units that are blank. And I know some of you still submitting blank questions because you say, I can't find it. You really should not submit it until you've given me an answer to everything. So if you can't find one or two questions, just save it at the bottom. There's a save feature. I don't know if y'all have ever seen it, but down here, you can't see it because the screen won't show you, but down here, there's a save button. It will actually save it for you, and you can come back and answer it later. I'd much rather you do that than send something blank, like you just gave up and threw your hands up in the air, okay? All right. All right, so let's go to the next one, 25. Again, I prefer a wrong answer than a blank, to be honest with you. Okay. Next question we're looking at here is 25. 25 says, what loads, if any, can be omitted? Okay, so you're probably thinking in this question, you're like, what the heck does he mean? What loads can be omitted? Well, think about something. This is not a trick question. I'm guilty. Manuel's guilty. A lot of people are guilty, Manuel, for that one. So let me think about it. So looking at this question, the only real issue of something that can be omitted, because you know you can't omit the VA for the general lighting, you know you can't omit any VA for the outlets, the receptacles, you know you can't omit the sign, the track lighting, the water heater. So what's the only thing that you're going to be able to potentially omit, right, in this equation? Well, it's going to be either the AC versus the heat, right? That's the only things that you possibly could be omitting. So usually when I do this question, I like to say skip 25, because if we answer 26, guess what happens? We're going to know the answer to 25, right? Okay. I mean, as we do the math, we'll easily be able to answer that question. So let's kind of move on down here. I'll adjust it down, so all we really need to see is the air conditioning stuff. All right, so let's do 26 real quick, and we'll leave 25 to, which we probably already know the answer based on the size of those electric heating units. Okay, but at any rate, 26, it says, what is the volt ampere load contribution for the heating or the air conditioning system? Okay, so this one is going to require us to calculate both the heating or the air conditioning. Now, obviously 25 is going to be the one that you omit, but we've got to do the calculation for 26, okay? So let's kind of get this calculation. So let's kind of get this thing started first. Okay, heat versus AC, okay? We're going to assume, and looking at this, that these are non-coincident loads, because if they weren't non-coincident loads, then you'd have to take them all, but we typically work on the value that the heat units are separate than the air conditioning units, okay? So let's kind of look at it here and do some math. Okay, let's do the heating and get it out of the way first. So here's the heating, okay? So we know the heating is 10 kW and 208 volts. And there's 4 of these, by the way. Also, you guys know that the blower is what's going to blow these heating units, these inline heating units. That's what's going to blow the heat around, okay? So when we're doing the heating, we're going to do both of these, okay? So let's kind of do the math, and I'll keep an eye on the chat, see who all comes up with it. So let's do the heating first. Well, the heating is basically, it already gave it to us. We didn't have to do any calcs. It just gave us the kW, 10. So obviously 10 times 4 is 40,000, right? Now, what about the blower? The blowers. Well, here's how you do that. It's 3-phase, right? So it's going to be 4, y'all with me? 4 times 208 times, it's 3-phase, 1.732. That's 1,441. And since it's 0.0, we're just taking 1,441. Okay, that's it. That's the VA. Okay, so you're going to take that 1,441, you're going to multiply by 4, because there's 4 blowers, right? So we're going to take that 1,441 times 4, that is 5,764. Add the 40,000 from the heat to that, so add 40,000 to it, and that is 45,764. There you go. And Sarah Firm had that in there. Good job. Good job. So there we go. That's what you should have. Anybody at any time don't follow, please let me know in the chat. I'll stop. I'll go back. You know I'm here for the long haul, guys. So again, everybody says Paul's long-winded, but y'all know Paul don't give a damn about what people say about Paul. So we don't worry about it. We're here to educate. We're not worried about them. All right. So that's our heat. So I'm just going to jot that down. Okay, 45,764. Now I am pretty sure that's going to be greater than the AC. So the answer to question 25, 25 should be the AC. All right. So to be honest with you, what's going to be for that is the 4 air conditioning compressors, the 4 condensing fans. But not the blower, because the blower has to be counted with the heat. But the air conditioning compressor and the condensing fans, obviously those are going to be less. But we're going to calculate it out and see. We got to work the math anyway, so might as well do it. Now, good news for us is we don't have to run to the back of the book, but we still got to calculate things out. Okay. So let's see here. Nothing in the chat so far. Nobody's done the AC yet, so we'll go on and work it. All right, so let's start it out. So we already know the values for the air handler, so we can skip that value. All right, now the air compressor. Now, first things to remember, folks, in the 2020 edition of the NEC, the air conditioning compressor is the largest motor in this whole equation. right? Largest motor. And what does it say in 220.60? If the lesser is the actual value, if the AC is the less than the heat, but the AC has the largest motor in the building, which it does, that's a 19.6 ampere motor, then you do what? You take that 125%. You with me? Okay. So we want to take that at 125%. So we'll take the first one here at 125%. So I'm going to do 19.6. So let's see here. Where am I at here? Okay, 19.6 times 208 times what? 1.732 times 1.25, which is 125%. Okay, so that is 8,826.2. Y'all see that? So we're going to do 8826, drop the 0.2. So I'm going to write this down. So it's 8826, and that's it. Okay, so that's the one. That's one air conditioning compressor. Okay. Now I'm going to gather the other three because that's just one. Remember, we only have to do the 125 for one. So I'm going to gather the other ones. So to get the other three, I'm going to do what? 19.6. Okay. 19.6. You with me? Looking at the chat. Nobody's giving me else. Somebody's giving me something. So I'm going to do 19.6. Okay. Times 208 times 1.732. And that is 7,061. So I'm going to do 7,061 times 3. That is 21,183. Okay. You with me? All right. So I've got those two I'll add together. So I'm going to add the 21,183 plus 8,826. And that is 30,009, I believe. Double check my math, but that's 30,009. So that's just the compressor. I mean, the compressor. All right. So now we're going to do the other. Now, let's go on and knock out those blowers again. So remember, y'all remember what that was before? It's 1,441, I believe. But let's double check that again. So the air handler is 4 times 208 times 1.732. Oops, sorry about that. Screwed up again. 4 times 208 times 1.732. There we go. Yep, 1,441. So 1,441 times 4 equals 5,764. Okay, is that what everybody gets? Make sure I do that again. 1,441 times 4. Yes, so that's 5,764. Okay, and that, okay, so that takes care of the blowers, the air handler blowers. And then the next is those condensing fans. So let's do that. So to do the condensing fan, it's what? 3 times 208 times 1.732. That is 1,080. Okay. So do 1,080 times 4 equals 4,320. So 4,320. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to add all of that together. I'm going to add 30,009 plus 5,764 plus 4,320. All right, there you go. Perfect. Okay, so there's our VA. So first thing we're going to look at it, and we notice that what's greater? What's the greater value? The greater value is the heat. So we already know that the answer to 25 is to omit the AC condenser and the, what is it? The compressor and the condenser. So that's the answer to 25. So the answer to 26 is 45,764, right? Because that is what? That is the heating load. So that's the greater, okay? So AC gets dropped. That's the answer to 25. 26 is 45,764. Easy peasy. Let's move on. Now, just in case you accidentally took, for example, the air conditioning compressor, just in case you were to take that and do all 4 of them at 125%, that's not really what 220.60 says. But in case you did, it still would not be greater than the heat. So sometimes for grading, I give you both options just because I know that the heat is the one that wins anyway. And that's what I'm trying to focus you in on, the heat. Okay. All right. 27. All right. Now, 27. What is the minimum size service overcurrent protected device required for this office? Okay. So now we're going to get into, we got to get into calcs. We got to add all these things together, and we've got to take into consideration what? We have to take into consideration something that we haven't done yet, and that is the continuous load. We haven't taken in the water heater yet, right? That hasn't been added in here yet, right? Okay. So what is it? Roberto says, what does Roberto says? I did like that it's still not greater than the heat. Yeah, even if you were to take them each at 125 and screw up, still not greater than the heat. The heat's going to win that one. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do for you guys and gals is we're going to do, we'll see if I can't switch you over. I've got one that I've filled out, and we're going to try to plug in all of the values and see what we've got. Okay. All right. So let me see if I can switch to this. Okay. So this is all, I filled this all out. Hopefully I didn't make any mistakes because I was rushing, but hopefully it's good. Okay. So this, for those that aren't familiar, and this is kind of new for me to show these forms to you guys filled out. I think I showed them last time. So some people find this helpful. So these forms are available to our Fast Track students. And so this works you through. It just kind of has some code references in there to remind you of things that's important. It gives you code references and reminds you. So some people find this very healthy. And that, or helpful, not healthy, although, okay, whatever. They help you move through each piece, right? And kind of give you some reminders, right? Okay, so let's kind of go down through the worksheet. So the very first one, remember what we did? We said it was number 1 we wrote down was 36,000 right there. So that was our 200 receptacles at 180 VA each, if you remember, right? The next one was the 7380. That was adding together both of our multi-outlet assembly values. And if you remember, is 2,880 plus 4,500. And that was 7,380, if y'all remember that. So that's where we got those numbers. So what you see on the screen was those 2 values that I had you write down for those multi-outlet assemblies. We did each one separately. And all we've done here on the form is add them together. That's all we've done. Now, the next one, Alan, thank you for liking the stream. I much appreciate it. All right, so the next one here is just a combination. Now, the reason you see these right here, just a little things to remind you if you're students, you see these hashes right here, these like slanted, that lets you know that that's not a final value. That slashes let you know that it's just the connected value. That's not after any calculation as far as our overall load goes. That's just part of the process. When you get down here to the solid, that's the values that we're going to be using. Okay, so that's what you see here. All right, so let's go here. So where does this value come from? Well, that's what we did right here at 220.44. You remember? What we did was we take the first 10,000 at 100% and the remaining value at 50%. So that's how we came up with the 26,690, if you remember. And that was the answer, by the way, on line 21. We already did this math, okay? So easy peasy so far, okay? All right, the next one is number 4, which is receptacle loads. Now, the reason that we could skip this one is because we didn't have to use 1 VA per the square footage, okay? Now, why is this important? Well, maybe you have a really big building, and maybe the 1 VA per square foot yields a greater result than what it would be for the receptacles if you were to do. Maybe they only have 25 receptacles in the building is huge. Well, then you're going to want to use the 1, okay, times the actual dimensions. So 1 times whatever the square footage is, that's the value that you're going to use, okay, for that receptacle load. But in this case, our number of receptacles was a greater value than using 1 VA per square foot, okay? You see how that works? So that's important to remember 220.14K, because you got to remember before you go too far down the line. But if you've got a really big warehouse that might only have 10 receptacles in it, well, then you're going to have, and it's a non-dwelling, then you're going to have to account for the load here, and you're going to have to use 1 VA per square foot. Okay, so again, important things to remember. Okay, let's move on. So the next one we were filling out here is our general lighting. And y'all remember we did that. That was 1.3. Y'all remember? And we did it times 19,000 because that's what was on 220.12, the table, right? Now, here's the other thing to remember, guys. Aren't we just going down the list? And that's what I try to tell people when they're preparing for an exam or even out in the world doing this in the real world. Break it down into bite-sized, manageable pieces. You know you've got receptacles, work that out. You know you have the lighting, work that out, okay? Bite-sized pieces, and that's all this form tries to do. It just make it easier. Trust me, you do these a couple times, you won't even need the form. You're just rocking and rolling, okay? You gotta get used to the process. All right, so this one was, and I got my calculator. Let's double check our math, make sure Paul didn't screw up. So 1.3 times 19,000 is 24,700. So that absolutely is correct. So that is right there. It's good. All right, next, lighting load demand factors. All right, we didn't have any of these in our layout. We didn't have any demand factors that would be applied here. But it's important to remember, if you do have some demand factors that you would apply here, this is where you would apply that. Real quickly, just going to the NEC to show you 220.42. Here's where your demand factors would be, and it applies to dwelling units, motels, hotels, warehouse, storage. Again, you have some demands you can do, but anything else would be at 100. So that's why in our case with the office building, this one doesn't apply. Okay, so just wanted to point that out to you. Got to go back to this. Go back to the PDF here. All right. So that's why we did not use it, but it does give you some really important notes here, okay, to be aware of in case it may come into play in your calculation. All right. Next was that track lighting, and y'all know we did this. It was 48 feet, and it was divided by 2 because it was 1,500 VA for what? For each 2 feet. So 48 divided by 2 is 24 feet, or 24 2-foot sections is an easier way to say it. Multiply that by 150, and that's where we got 3,600. Remember, we haven't taken it as a continuous load yet. So important to remember that. Now, if you want to skip this step and you want to take it as a continuous load back when you calculated it, that's fine too. The reason we didn't do it is because the question told us not to do it, right? And that's so that I can show you how it's done here on the form, okay? But if you wanted to do it and change it right here and put the value here instead of the 1,800 before you apply the continuous load, totally up to you. If you feel it saves you a step, go for it. Because we're going to do that down here under item 10 where it says continuous loads. All right, the next was that sign. Here's that sign. Again, the beautiful thing about these forms as well, if it does anything, it also gives you all of the code references so you can just kind of lock them in your brain, okay? So here it was 1,800 for the sign. Why? Because it had to be at least 1,200, but we did the math, 15 times 120, right? So 15 times 120, that's where we got 1,800. So the code rule here was it has to be at least 12, but it most certainly can be greater than 12. And in our case, it was 1,800. So that's why we put it here. Again, that is a continuous load, but we haven't taken it into consideration yet. But you could if you wanted. You could skip this line 10 and just do each one of these as a continuous load and be done with it. Again, totally up to you how you want to do it as you work your calc. We just are doing it because the question said to do it without being considered a continuous load. with that said, when we get to 10, it's going to remind you to take those loads, okay, as continuous load. So since we already know the loads are taken at 100%, which is the 3,600 and 1,800, all we got to do is get that additional 25%. Now, it's amazing how people will get confused at this and say, well, where does the 25% come from? It's just like with 220.50 for motors. When we tell you to take the largest motor times 25%, it's because you've already taken it at 100%. All we're trying to do is get that 25% to equate to 125. It's just, you got to get used to that mentality in your head. So what is 3,600 plus 1,800? 3,600 plus 1,800 is 5,400. That's at 100%. And we just multiply that by 0.25, okay? And that is 1,350. So that 1,350 is the value for the continuous load portion for 3,600 and 1,800, okay? So it's just, we just did it separate, that's all right? So that takes care of our continuous loads, all right? So now we get down here to our non-coincident loads. And remember that heat versus AC? Remember which one won? The heat won, 45,764. That's exactly what you're gonna plug in right there, okay? Now, down to motor loads, all right? So we're down here, so this 360. So here, you've got to always take into consideration still the largest motor that's in play, all right? So let's go back up real quick and see what we've got as far as motors. All right, so the largest motor that's in play looks like, of the loads that we're going to keep, it looks like here it's going to be, hold on, let me see here. Let's do 141 times 0.25. Yes, so check this out, folks. Let's go back to the lesson really quick because I got to show you this. What's the largest motor? Well, remember the AC is gone. The heat was taken. But of those motors that are going to be present, that's a better way to say it, remember those air handlers? They're being used for both the heat and the AC. So since the AC has been discounted or removed, the heat was in play, but the heat has the air handlers. So remember, we only need to take one of the largest motor. So remember what that VA was for that air handler motor? It was 4 times 208 times 1.732. That was 1,441, wasn't it? Well, you just take the 1,441 times 0.25, and that is 360.2. You drop the 0.2, it's 360. That is the contribution for the largest motor. And you only do one. That's it. No different than we did for residential. It's the same thing. We only take one. So there we go. So that is why you see 360 right here. Lastly, all other loads that we have not accounted for. Well, the only load that we haven't accounted for is the water heater. If you remember, the water heater was, and I bet y'all thought we'd forget the water heater, 5 kW. So 5,000. Brooklyn, thank you for subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you. All right, so that's 5,000. So 5 kW, K being 1,000 kilowatts. 5,000 watts is equivalent to 5 kilowatts, which is equivalent to 5 kW, which is equivalent to 5,000 VA. Okay, all of those things work synonymously. All right, so let's go back to the lesson. And so there's where we're going to add the 5,000. So now all we're going to do at this point, we've added all the loads up. We've taken into consideration everything. Now what we want to do is we want to add up. And on our form, all we're doing is adding up 3 through 14. Thank you, Mark. Glad. Thanks for subscribing. So simply add 3 through 14 up. And then we're going to see if our number's correct. So guys, I'll put them on the screen for you to add them up with me. So it's 3 through 14. So let's do it together. So it's 26,690 plus 24,700 plus 3,600 plus 1,800 plus 1,350, because that was the continuous load contribution. All right, plus 45,764 plus 360 plus 5,000 equals 109,264. So hopefully that is exactly what you got. That's exactly what I got. Now, in case you're saying to me, but Paul, what about that lighting load, the general lighting? Don't we have to take that as continuous load? Did you take it? Remember, we took that into account because that 1.3 VA per square foot in table 220.12 already has that figured in. Now, you 2017 folks, it does not have that figured in. So you got to make sure you add that additional value, that additional 25%. Okay? Just letting you know, in case you forget. Okay? Uncle Paul's got your back. It's all good. All right, so let's go on now. So now that's what we've got. God's sakes, don't nobody go online calling me Uncle Paul. Jesus, I should have never said that. All right, so here you go, 109,264. We're dividing it by 360 because it's three-phase, right? So in this case, we know this is the case because it was a 208 volt system, right? Okay. So 208 times 1.732 is 360.25. You can drop the 0.25, so it's just 360. So in case you didn't know, that's how we... Yeah, I'm so going to do that. I figured you would, Swartzy. You were the one I was worried about. All right, so I'm going to take this 109,264 divided by 360, and that is 303.5. Remember, 220.5 says 0.5 or greater, round up. So we're going to be going at 304 amps. So that is what it is, 304 amps. And now we got to size conductors. Now you already see the conductor size here, but we're going over and nothing was, said, okay. So we got to go back to the question first, right? Go back to the question. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for hanging in. We're almost done. We're almost done. If you got another couple minutes, we can be done. All right, so I'm going to go back to the lesson real quick because we still got to answer. So we already know our answer for the amps. So let's go down here to what question did we leave off? We're on 27. Okay, so question 27 wanted to know what our answer to that was. So we had 304 was our amps. Now, it asked us what is the service overcurrent protection. Now, where do you go to find the overcurrent protection, folks? You go to 240.6a, right? That's the list of standard breakers. See if there is one for 304. And I can promise you there isn't, but we're going to go look because that's the way we work here. So we're going to go to 240, if I can find it. 240 right here. We're going to go to 240.6. All right, and say 304. Do we have anything for 304? Nope, we got 300. So we're able to go up to 350. The rule that allows us to go to the next size is 240.4b. And we jump to the next size, and that allows us to do 350. Now, we still got to have conductors that can handle the load that we calculated. But as far as the overcurrent's concerned, question number 27 is 350. Okay, next question, since we're working with these numbers. The next question says, all right, a parallel run. So this is forcing me to do two sets. Says a parallel run of service entrance conductors will be installed in two raceways, okay? Two raceways. What is the minimum size THWN? Remember now, it's THWN. There's no -2. So it's THWN, copper ungrounded conductors that can be used. Okay, so first thing we know, it's got to be two sets. So easy peasy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that 304 What are we going to do with it? We're going to take that 304, we're going to divide it by 2, and that gives me what? 152 amps. Okay? Well, now I'm going to go see what conductors are required to be 152 amps. Okay? All right, so let's go to the code. And y'all know where we're going to go, right? We're going to go 31016, ampacity tables. So let's go to 31016 right here. All right, so I got to have a conductor that's good for at least 152 amps. Okay? So you're saying, well, what do I got to have? Well, what do you got to do, folks? Well, 1 aught is good for 150. Oh, by the way, here's your TH8, here's your THW8. It's under the 75. Doesn't have a -2 like over here. Okay? So it's under the 75. It doesn't matter that we didn't tell you the lugs or all that because we're not wanting those to come into play. We're just giving you the values here. So don't overthink it, as Russ would say. All right, so right here, THWN. Okay? And we're going to go down and up. That's not going to work. All right? So we've got to go to a 2 aught. Okay? So the minimum required size, it has to be 2 aught because a paralleled 1 aught would only be 300 amps. We need 304. So even though we're going to have a little extra to boot here, we still got to kick it up to a 2 aught. Okay? So that's how we kick it to that. So that comes back to our question. And so the answer to here for 28, let's answer 28. So the answer to 28 is 2 aught copper. Easy peasy, right? Okay. Next question, and I've already worked this math out for you, so for doing the neutral. So here you go. So here it is. It says, what is, now we've answered most everything. We know it's a 350 breaker, going to have 2 sets of 2 aught copper. We've done all the math. We're good to go. Now we want to see what is the minimum size THWN copper neutral grounded conductor that can be installed. Okay. Now remember, the lighting does not consist of nonlinear loads. Okay. So these are not nonlinear loads that we're dealing with. Okay. That's good news, right? So we don't have to worry about harmonics and we don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff. So let's going to go back and do this. Now remember, here's some tips for you. The neutral, if the phase conductors are paralleled, okay? If the phase conductors are paralleled, remember we're not doing the grounding electrode conductor, Alberto. So we're going to be doing the neutral now. All right. So if the phase conductors are paralleled, guess what happens to the neutral? It has to be paralleled as well, right? Got to be paralleled as well. That's a key thing to remember in the question. Okay. So let's go to, let's see here. Let me see if I can't remember if I did do the calculation. Yes, I did do it. I did do it. So let's go and see what we got. So here's what we're doing. So here's the beautiful thing about these calculations for this. All of the loads that are neutral loads, you get to keep. The only thing you're going to get rid of is the loads that are what? That are not neutral loads. So you're not going to count the 208 loads. You're only going to count the neutral loads. This is so easy, isn't it? So look, the receptacles all have a neutral, so they all count. And guess what? You get to apply the same demands as you did when you did the ungrounded hots. You get to do the same thing for the neutral. That's why this is so easy. So remember this value before? This is the total amount after we applied the demands of 220.44 for all those receptacles, not only the multi-outlet, but even the regular outlets, receptacle outlets. So we've already done that. That's easy peasy, right? Next is the lighting. Well, all of that lighting is 120 volt lighting. So you still use the 1.3 VA times 19,000, still 24,700. That didn't change. The lighting is the lighting. It's 120 volt lighting. Okay. Didn't say anything otherwise. Next, that track lighting, same rules apply. It's 48 feet. It's 150 VA for every 2 foot piece. Same thing, they all have neutral loads, so it's the same value, 3,600. And it's easy. The neutral, the sign, it was a 120 volt sign. The 1800 still applies. And guess what? They're all still the continuous loads, the sign and the track lighting. So you do the same thing you did before. You got to capture that additional 25% so that you can take them at 125%. Exact same steps we just did a minute ago. So that was 3,600 plus 1,800. That equals 5,400 right here. So that's why we got 1,350. Now that's it. All of the other loads are not neutral loads. The water heater's not, the air handler's not, the blower's not, all of those were three-phase. They were not 120 volt loads. So all we do is add these up. So I'm gonna add them up. 26,690 plus 24,700 plus 3,600 plus 1,800 plus 1,350. That is 58,140 right there. Okay, very good, guys. You're getting it. Then I'm gonna go down a little bit so you can see what we got. There's where we got the 5840. And just like before, we're gonna divide this by 360, which is 208 multiply 208 times 1.732, just so y'all can see it. That's where we get the 360. Remember, if it had been 480, it's 831. Things to remember, 831, 360 for 208 volt three-phase, 381 for 480 volt three-phase. Kind of remember those things, all right? So we're gonna take that 58,140, divide that by 360, and that gives us 161.5, which is what we're gonna round 0.5 and greater. That's what it says in 220.5. We're gonna round it up, so that's 162. Now we gotta parallel that. So we're gonna take that 162 divided by 2, and you folks already know where I'm going with this. Since it's gotta be paralleled, I'm gonna take 162 divided by 2, that is 81 amps. Well, if I go to 310/16 for 81 amps, let's see here. So here's 310/16. We're still under the 75-degree column because we said it's THWN. Okay, we're not going to assume anything else in this calculation. And so I'm going to go down and say, well, could be a 4, right? Well, no, it can't be a 4. Why? Because the parallel rules in 310.10 state, if I can find it right here, conductors in parallel. Notice it says it cannot be what? It says aluminum, copper clad aluminum, copper conductors for each phase, polarity neutral, or grounded circuit shall be permitted to be connected in parallel. So that's what we did. Okay. Only in sizes 1/aught and larger. So even though per the table it could have been 4 gauge, handled the 81 amps, 2 sets of 81, we can't do it. So it's got to be at least 1/aught. So that's the answer to 29. It's 1/aught. And I saw many of you got it. You did great. So 29, it is 1/aught, 2 sets of that. Okay? See how easy this stuff is? And then the last one is, what's the minimum size of the copper grounding electrode conductor? Well, remember, the grounding electrode conductor, it didn't say it was a rod, pipe, or plate, so you're not going to use 250.66 A, B, or C. You're going to go straight to the table. Okay? What is that? Ryan just passed. Awesome. Congratulations, Ryan. Didn't it feel good? Didn't it feel good? It's like, doesn't it feel like just a weight lifted off? It's like, it's like a huge, massive exhale when you pass exams. All right, so there you go. So, and not to mention our spouses and other halves like to put all that pressure on us. Nah, they really don't, but mine was very supportive. I'm sure yours was too. All right, so, where were we at? So when we go to 250.66, we're not gonna go to A, B, and C because no electrode was given here. So tip, when they don't tell you the electrode, go straight to the table. Another tip, you want a little tip, boom, go straight to the table. So we're gonna go to 250.66 to finish this last one off. Let's see here. So we're going to 250.66. The good news is, Ryan, now I want to get you hooked. I want you hooked on code, because now everybody that passes exam, I don't want you to go, okay, I'm done with the code. No, man, your journey's just beginning. Now what you need to do is, because you want to be a leader, you want to stand out, you want to be leaps and bounds above everybody else. So now your task, Ryan, is to pick areas of the NEC that you find challenging and just simply hammer them, like motors or transformers, or pick something in there that you just want to hammer away at until you get all those little things that you ever wanted to know unlocked in your brain. Okay? It's part of the mental part of being an electrician. In fact, electricians who just pull cable and just bend conduit and don't get into the mental game, I just don't really feel that they are well-rounded electricians. The mental game is this code book, because everything that you do in the field revolves around the code book. You ever wonder if you're just used to pulling cable and you know where you got to secure it and support it, or if you're doing all this stuff, or you're putting a number of bins and you know you can't exceed 360 between pull points? You think that that's just part of your training, but that's all rooted in the code. And people go, well, code sucks, code ain't code. Everything you do is rooted in the code. Once you learn the skill, this is the only path to enlightenment, is learning how to maneuver the code and being able to rattle those things off. When people look at you and go, wow, that guy or that gal knows their stuff. Okay, it's a great feeling. I'm just saying. All right, and I'm just got ADD. I forgot where I was going. Oh, 250.66. So remember, you go right to the table right here. And now it says the area, it says size of the largest ungrounded conductors, or since we had parallel ungrounded conductors, you remember, then it says what? Then it's going to be the equivalent area for the parallel conductors. Okay? So do y'all all remember the size we had? We had two sets of 2/0. Okay, so the first thing I got to do is I got to find out what the area is, or the circular mills. I got to find out what the area is of a 2/0. So where do I go? Chapter 9, Table 8. So that's where we're going. So Chapter 9, Table 8. Really quickly, get what we got to get. So Chapter 9, we're going to go to Table 8 right here. And we're going to go down to 2/0. Here's 2/0. And here's the circular mills. That's the area. So 133,100. Obviously, multiply that by 2. So 133,100, because again, it's parallel, times 2 is 266,200 circular mills. Right? Now that we're armed with that number, let's go back and do what? Let's go back to 250.66. Okay, so I'm going to go back to it. We already know the circular mills now, so we're good to go. So we'll go to 250.66 right here. All right, so 266 circular mills. So we already know that we're between 3/0 and 350, because that 350 is 350,000 circular mills, and we're at 266,200 circular mills. Okay, so what's the size? You guessed it. No brainer. 2-gauge copper is the size of our grounding electrode conductor. Now, keep in mind that if your question says ground rod, then it only needs to be a 6. But we weren't given the electrode. So we're going to go straight to the table, and that's what we come up with. Okay? All right. So let's get back to the lesson. And that's the very last one down here, right here. And that's where you're going to put, oh, I could have been filling this out, guys. I'm sorry. Oops. I'll do the last one anyway. There you go. So we could have filled off. So actually, this is what it should look like. Let me go in and fill this out here. So 21 should be 26,000. I forgot, folks, that I could have filled this out. So 690 is what you should have had there, right? And here you should have had 24,700. 23 should have been 3,600. Right? Oops. Sorry about that. 600. This one should have been 1,800. This one right here should have been omitted, be the AC. Good enough. 26 should be 45,764. 27 should have been 350. 28 should have been 2/0 copper. And 29 should have been 2/0 copper. Okay. And of course, these are parallel, so you could do like that to make me know that it's parallel. Okay. Easy peasy, folks. Code references to 20.14 would have been I and H. Right? Here, so 22, let's see what I wrote down. 22 would be, this is the table. So this table 220.12. And in 23, I'm looking at your comments. So if you got any comments, just feel free to put them on the board. This would be 220. So we did 220.43b. Okay, that was dealing with the track lighting. And then the sign here is 220.14f. Again, we're in the 2020 code, by the way. Okay, the AC, so 25 would have meant we would have done, let's see here, would have been 220.60 because we would be comparing them, and that's how we determined that AC was dropped off. And then this one would also be the one we did when we finally came up with the heat. Hold on for a second, my screen's rolling. So this one would be 220.60 as well. We had to use that for both. And then 27, we did what? We went to 240.6a. Oops. 6a. Looked at the table. Actually, that's table. Sharp. I got to watch it because Schwartzy will jump on me. In 28, okay, this is just, we could just say it's a calc. There's no code reference for that. So we just say calc. And down here, 29, same thing. We could, but remember we had the parallel rules, but they didn't apply. So we're just going to do, let's see, 29. Actually, what was 29? I'm sorry. 29 was, 29 was 1/0. I'm sorry. It's because it was a neutral. My bad. It had to be at least 1/0. And why did we get there? Because of, 310.10, right? G. And of course, we did the calculation too, but the reason we had to be 1/0 was because of the parallel rules. And then last week, we did table 250.66. Folks, that's your answers, folks. That's what you should be. In your total equation, I'll take it to the chatting real quick. Nobody put any in the questions, anything? Let's see here. Can you go over question 30 again? Yes, I can. All right, question 30, Walter, was simply finding the grounding electrode conductor. That's it. So, grounding electrode conductors are based on what? Based on the service conductors. We calculated those earlier at 2/0. Okay? What's up, Elwood? I didn't see you in here. Thanks for coming in. If I didn't holler at you earlier, I didn't see you sneak in here, my friend. Thanks for joining us. Good evening. Have a great evening. Okay? Sorry I missed you, brother. I didn't see you in here. All right, so, Walter, since our conductors were 2/0, we got to know what the circular mills is of that. So that's why we went to Chapter 9, Table 8 to get the circular mills of a 2/0 conductor. And that was 133,700. Well, remember, they were running parallel, right? So you add it to times 2 because there's 2 of them. So 133,100 times 2. That's how we got the 266,200 circular mills. You with me so far? Then we went to the table 250.66, right? And we went to the table here. Remember, it says the equivalent area of the parallel conductors. That's why we added together the 133,100 times 2 because they're in parallel, right? Side by side. And then we take that 266, which is the circular mill combined, and that's why we have the equivalent area. And we go down here and find where that 266 falls into play. And it falls in right here between the 3/0 and the 350. Remember, these are 350,000 circular mills. Okay, it's just abbreviated. It tells you that because it's right here, KC mill. It assumes that we know 350 is 350 KC mill, which is 350,000 circular mills. So since it falls between these two, that's why copper, that's why the grounding electrical conductor is going to be a size 2. And that's how we got that. Okay, so hopefully that answers that for you, my man. All right. Nobody had any questions from the units, so I'm assuming you're having no trouble moving through your units. Remember, you can reach out to me if you need to. I'm more than happy to help you. Hopefully you got something out to tonight, and I am excited about the Sparky Mafia. I know that some people say, why Mafia? Because Mafia is not what you think to everybody, okay? Mafia not only doesn't mean an organized crime unit. Okay, if you look at the Webster's Dictionary, there's multiple definitions. And the definition that we use with Mafia is a collective organization. And us Sparkies are all collectively together, but some of us Sparky Mafia might be just a little mischievous. So, hey, what can I say? Some of the graphics that might come out might be a little bit mischievous, okay? But again, that's all in fun. So, check out our websites. If you want any of this unique swag, hats and stuff like that, make sure you go over to electricianpride.com or the Don. That's right. I am going to have a funny little mug, like one of the neatest things we're going to do is a decanter set. And it's going to be like a collector's edition. It's going to be wicked. The big decanter is going to have the ohms wheel, and then on the other ones, it's going to have other electrical symbols. But in the Sparky Mafia, we're going to have me on the decanter as the Don, okay, a graphic, a cartoon. And then we're going to have like underlings underneath me, like, you know, that equate to electricians like apprentice, journeyman, master, and wireman. And they're going to have funny little images that depict us as a group. It's going to be totally cool. But that's the kind of stuff that we're going to offer. And trust me, we're going to make it affordable. Because we're all doing it in our office now. We're not going to be outsourcing. That's the one thing that we decided to do, and we invested in all the equipment to do it in-house. So in the next couple months here, we're going to be bringing everything in and have everything set up, and we'll be running our own stuff, printing our own stuff, and it's going to be awesome. Okay? Anyway, too much about that. All right, folks. Hopefully you learned something tonight. Another neat thing we're going to be doing is we're going to do a special edition. I got excited about these things. A special edition little pocket edition that like a business card holder with some neat engravings on it. And inside of it, there's going to be metal cards, okay, anodized metal, and there's going to be like 6 of them. On each side, it's going to be electrical formulas. It's going to be electrical tables. It's going to be a cheat sheet for the grounding and bonding table. It's going to have the motors formulas. It's going to have neat. And so you give them to an apprentice or you keep it in your pocket and you can pull it out. It'll be like having a little Uglies book, but it'll be cooler than that. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be cool. Anyway, bunch of stuff like that. All right, folks, enough of that. Take care. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for stopping by and joining me tonight. Until next time, we'll see you next week. God bless.